how much money can you actually make using OddsJam? Welcome, my name is Trevor. I've been using OddsJam for over 4 months, and I wanted to make this video. It'll be a quick one just on how much money can you actually make by scaling your bets, being limited. There's pros and cons to this, and so I want to talk about what specifically influences how much money you're able to actually make off of OddsJam plus EV betting. And maybe we can come up with a number. If you use OddsJam for over a year, how much money can you actually make? Let's do it. So quickly, just to recap how I've been doing using OddsJam. I started in March, so it's been about 4 or 5 months now. I'm up $7,500 in profit. I've wagered over $100,000 on these plus EV bets with a profit margin of almost 7%, which is awesome. The middle sort of months here, in May and June, I was traveling, so my volume is super small. I barely had access to any sports books, so that's kind of why this profit number and my volume is pretty low for a 5-month stint with OddsJam. But nonetheless, this is what we've got here. In July, still going strong, up $1,000 in this first week, as you can see. So let's talk about what influences how much money you can actually make off of OddsJam, and how much I actually think you can. So really the two numbers that matter are the volume, how much you're wagering, and the profit margin, because these two numbers directly create this profit, right? Because if you take 6.94% of your total stake, that's what your profit is, right? So if you can increase your volume, right? If you can max out your volume as much as possible while remaining profitable from here, right? And while still taking plus EV bets and taking bets that are high percentage, your profit is going to continue to increase, and your profit's going to get larger as your volume gets larger. And those are really the two main things. If we assume that you're still taking your plus EV bets, right, and you're still going to the plus EV tool, right, and you're taking these bets and you're taking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% profitable bets, and you're properly taking them, and there's tons of other videos that will touch on that, but let's assume that you're betting properly using the plus EV tool. If you can actually increase your volume, right, then your profit's going to go up. So let's assume that I drop down to a 5% profit margin because maybe I'm overperforming, whatever. I drop down to a 5% profit margin. By the end of the year, or maybe early next year, I get to $1 million in volume. I really prioritize getting my volume up there and getting $100,000 out there every single month, right? That would be pretty high, but let's say I can do that. Get to $1 million staked and a 5% profit margin. Well, that gives me a $50,000 profit, right? Because 5% of $1 million will be $50,000. So realistically, the amount of money that you can make off of OddsJam comes down to how much money you can wager. And so there's a couple things to keep in mind there. Number one, it's how much time and basically how much time you can check the plus EV tool and be wagering on these events, right? Because if you're busy throughout the day and you're not able to be on your computer making these bets all day, your volume's going to suffer, right? So you want to make sure that you're checking the plus EV tool pretty often, right? I mean, I like to do it every couple minutes per hour, right? And then the other thing is, what is your bankroll? Because you want to make sure that your bankroll is at least, $10,000, $20,000 if you're trying to get to $1 million wagered. Because you can't be wagering your entire bankroll every single day, because that, you could have 2 bad days and you're wiped out, right? So you want to make sure that you have a pretty substantial bankroll if you're trying to, increase your volume. So those two things, are pretty important. And the other thing is just making sure that you're actually taking proper plus EV bets, because if you're reaching and taking ones that aren't, they've bumped or something and the odds have changed, there's no point in taking those, because you're just going to lower this profit margin, which will then lower your profit. So, at the end of the day, the answer is how much can you make on OddsJam? Well, in theory, unlimited. Now, there's that word, limited. And that is kind of the caveat here, is that you are going to get limited on sports books, and that will limit your upside potential. It will limit the amount that you're able to get down, the volume. And so that's where it kind of comes in it really just depends on how often you're being limited, on what sports books you're being limited on, how much you're being limited for. And that will dictate how much you can make, right? Because like I said, it all comes down to your volume, assuming that you're still taking these profitable bets on OddsJam. So hopefully this kind of made it clear to you guys. I mean, for me, it's basically like I'm trying to get to $1 million staked, and I can assume that I'll have a $50,000 profit. If you think that you're able to get to $1 million staked over a year, then yeah, I mean, you could assume you'd make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 using OddsJam. I haven't been limited a whole like too much on my main books. There are about 5, 6, 7 books that are where my the majority of my volume's coming from. The other books I've kind of been limited on, and they're not my main stuff. But if I were to be limited on a couple of these big books that I use, then it will definitely hinder my profits. So yeah, it comes down to volume and not being limited, and making sure you're taking the right bets. And really, the sky's the limit, to be honest. I think in general, if you wanted a number, I would say you could make $50,000 a year using OddsJam if you can get your volume out, if you're really grinding it. But if you're doing it casually, you can easily make $10,000 a year. I mean, I'm what, 5 months in, and I've made $7,500. So, and I've really only been betting for 3 months, religiously, right? So, yeah, I would say on the low end, $10,000, $20,000. On the high end, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. So it's super lucrative. Use that link down below to get OddsJam, a 1-week free trial, and you'll also get a 90-day money back guarantee if you use that link. So if you don't like it after 90 days, you get all of your money back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys next time.